Hello, my friends. I'm Teresa Lusk, the host of the Teresa Lusk Show, and I have a very important guest with me today, Kyle Sims. I want to tell you just a little bit about Kyle Sims because Kyle actually has been involved in the child sex trafficking prevention. But let me just tell you that he's been a body man and campaign staffer for Shelley Luther for the Senate race. He's been campaign manager for Tom Meredith, who was running for mayor. And he's been a bodyguard and advanced team director for Senator Don Huffines for governor primary race. So, my friends, help me welcome our next guest, Kyle. Kyle, thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the offer.
Thank you. You know, Kyle, you've been exposed to a lot. You've dealt with political people who are out there running. You've been to the border, is that correct as well? You've been to the border. You've been involved in so many ways that involves a protective type work, right? You've been a protective officer, a high level, and you've dealt with something very, very concerning today, which is child sex trafficking.
Correct.
Now, we want to educate our viewers. And we're in the Collin County area, you and I. But this is nationwide.
Nationwide.
So talk to us a little bit about what's going on. What do our viewers who are just everyday people who maybe aren't even getting the right news from the media, because you know how that is. Tell us a little bit about what do we need to know?
Well, I work with a organization, a couple of private investigators on the ground that actually go in and surveil. They put surveillance on these places. They go in and do their homework, and we have a lot of brothels in Collin County that people just are not aware of. I've met with different people that have no idea that this is going on in our cities in Collin County. I know how many each city has. I don't release a lot of information unless my source tells me I can, but I can tell you they've met with some local police departments, making them aware of what's going on. And some of these are $1 million homes. Some of them are restaurant establishments. Some of them are massage parlors. I mean, they're all over, and they're in our backyard. And it's not just the establishments. People have to be very cautious when they're out and about and pay attention to other people surrounding them, whether you're shopping at a store, whether you're grocery shopping, whether you're at the movies, whatever you're doing, these children are at risk of being grabbed.
So help us understand, because you said you need to pay attention. What does that look like, Kyle? Because if you asked me, in general, as a woman, I will pay attention to my surroundings, but I'm not sure that I could identify what I'm supposed to be looking for other than somebody walking behind me trying to grab me, or maybe a van. I get pretty, crazy when I see a van or something like that, but that's about it. So what is it that we need to look for?
Well, and this is not written in stone, but I've learned from the information I've learned that it's, these people look like your everyday citizens. So anytime that you're out with a child, most of the time, if there is a parent with that child, parents have a habit of taking their eyes off children. These people don't do that. They make sure that those kids are with them. They don't take their eye off of them. They're not on the next aisle wandering around. They're with them. That's kind of one of the things you really have to look for when people are out and about. I watch everything around me just because it's in my nature. But if I see a child that's, whether it be screaming, whether the facial expression on their face, I look at the people they're with. There's just all kind of things that you have to look for and just be aware of what's going on around you.
So are you allowed to give out the numbers in Collin County or something that we can use to gauge how intense this is?
I can tell you the last count I got, there's over 60 in Plano. There's over 40 in McKinney. There's some in Allen. There's some in Fairview. There's some in the Colony.
Are we talking about brothels?
Yes.
My goodness.
Yes.
How do you identify the brothels?
Well, I don't identify them. I get my information from people that have identified them, and these are private investigators that work underground. Basically. This is all they do. There's one organization in particular called Shepherd's Watch, and they're based out of East Texas, but that's what they do. They try to get safe houses for these children. Plus, they're going into establishments. They're working with DPS, local law enforcement, and other agencies to make sure that they're getting the correct data. And it takes a long time to do an investigation on these places. So it's a constant battle to make sure that they are being fed good information, and then they have to go in there and make sure it's correct.
Gosh, that's so close to home. You would think, you hear these stories and they just sound so far away. They don't sound like they could happen in Collin County, and one of the most affluent counties, I think, in the nation, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
that's really where we could go a little bit and talk about. You would think that just because you live in the so-called safer type neighborhoods, but the truth is you still have this crime. This crime does not discriminate.
Does not discriminate, and it exists everywhere in Collin County. I mean, I've got numbers all around the state, different cities. This is just not prevalent to Collin County. This is nationwide, like you said.
Yeah.
You know, the new movie that's releasing today, I encourage people to go see that movie.
What's it called?
I just had a brain freeze.
Is it Freedom? Is it called Freedom? Is that what we're talking? Yeah.
Freedom.
Or something of that nature.
Freedom.
Okay.
But this is reality of what we're dealing with here. That's why we fight. We have 6 grandchildren of our own, 5 granddaughters, and I'm not just fighting for them. I'm fighting for everybody's children.
That's right.
You know, we have people that go to school board meetings, but it's the same 30 or 40 people that show up.
Oh, wow.
We need to really be engaged with what's going on. We need to be aware of what our children are learning in school, the CRT, the indoctrination, all that can be tied to this.
Okay, so I was going to ask about that. So how is it tied, and how is going to school board meetings, how does it prevent this type of issue?
Well, it holds people accountable. I mean, we're having curriculum and books in these schools, and people have to understand a child under 17 can't consent to anything.
That's right.
So why in the world are we having pornography in our schools, in our lesson plans? Why are we having surveys go out? This is all, in my opinion, a brainwashing apparatus.
Correct.
That gets these kids lured into something they're not.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to really focus on getting involved and making sure our children are protected in every aspect.
So you're tying in the fact that these school boards are happily allowing this kind of material to be accessible to our children, which desensitizes and brainwashes them to maybe be a victim to some of this child trafficking.
Absolutely. And I've communicated with all of our board members here in McKinney, our mayor, our council. And when I have somebody send me an email back and tell me, Kyle, that doesn't exist in the schools, when we've seen the proof that it does exist in the schools, why are parents not at these meetings holding their school board accountable?
Yeah, I would suspect that I just have seen a lot of parents are just somewhat asleep to what's going on. I think there's been this false idea that your child is safe. You're sending them to school, they're safe, but the truth is that they're not. And I think as long as people like yourself and myself and others who are willing to be bold and vocal, you begin to help the community wake up. You do.
You do, and I do all this on my own. My wife and I are both very strong advocates for children.
Good.
And people have to understand that if our school boards are not held accountable and our city leaders not held accountable and they're not talking about what's going on, then why are they in office?
Yeah.
Why are they not fighting the fight with us? I don't care about their seat. I don't care about their position.
Yeah.
We need to start caring about what our kids are facing.
Yeah.
And you know, there's been some uproars at some of the school meetings. There's a couple of lawsuits going on for free speech right now.
Good.
Just because people are speaking up about this.
Wow.
And so we have to be courageous and understand that this is not going to get any better. It's going to keep getting worse if we don't fight that battle.
Absolutely. And we do have to fight that battle. And I think a lot of the things that we're seeing is that, Kyle, I have heard a lot of people, even who agree with positions like yours and mine, they still want you to hush and don't ruffle any feathers, and they want you to not say too much, right? That's part of the problem.
Absolutely.
And I have seen, though, to to kind of give voice to the other side, I have seen that sometimes the way people voice is the problem. It's not that they're voicing. I believe that as a faith person, number one, I just believe you ought to stand up for those who cannot protect themselves, and you ought to be a voice, period, about something that's not right.
Right.
But then people say, well, be quiet, or, or they don't want you to speak up. Right now, it's very important for people, my friends, those of you who are watching, it's very important that you understand that there is a voice that's needed, and it's yours. And, I think it's important to pray for courage. I think it's important to pray to be unapologetic. I pray that for my kids. Let them be unapologetic. Let them be bold. Let me be bold. I want to be the one on the front line being the most unapologetic and the most bold,
right?
Because somebody's got to do it. And I think that God does mantle you with somewhat of this to help you be. There's the ones who are called to the very front lines, and then there's those who are to follow. Somebody's got to do it, Kyle.
They do. And I tell people all the time, everybody's not in the position I am that I can't be canceled. That's why they don't like me. But if you can't be on the front lines, you can for sure be behind the scenes, getting information, doing your research, making others aware. I tell everybody every day, talk to 5 strangers a day if you can. If you change one mind out of 5, you've done your job.
That's good.
But we have to start being courageous and quit worrying about what everybody thinks. And I will say that I've met with people that don't necessarily agree that the CRT, the indoctrination, is a factor in this. I strongly believe it is. Sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone, and you have to talk to people that you normally don't talk to. And you have to put the facts out there to them, let them digest that, and then meet them again, because that's what you have to do.
That's good. Well, I think too, sometimes it's hard when you support things, because a lot of times conservatives are known to be the ones, right, politically, who are speaking against the CRT. And people have been brainwashed to think that CRT means you're racist, you're a bigot, you hate gay people, you hate trans people, whatever. You may not agree with their lifestyle, but not agreeing doesn't mean that you hate them. It just means you don't agree with it, and you don't want your child being saturated with that teaching.
I don't hate anybody, but I do hate some of the policies and some of the rhetoric that is being spread throughout the community, because it's not the person I hate, it's what you're teaching these children that I hate.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And it's such an issue. I'm not sure how much advancement we're going to make, but I believe you still need to do your part, stand up. And there are some good things, though. I mean, you've seen some of the Supreme Court rulings. So we see some advancement. Well, I think the fact that some people rose up and spoke up, and, it puts the pressure on those who are in charge of enforcing the law. It holds them to the fire.
Well, what I ask people all the time is, are you okay with a 8, 9, 10-year-old girl being sex trafficked right here in your backyard?
Right.
Are you really okay with that?
Yeah.
And if you're not, then you need to speak up.
Yeah.
That could be your child next.
Right.
That could be your grandchildren next. So you have to put the cold, hard facts in front of them, and it's not always pleasant. It's not something that I like doing all the time, but in order to wake people up, we have to be bold and courageous.
Yeah. Are there some challenges that are, I guess our police officers, those in charge of, coming down hard on this crime, are there some major challenges that they're facing that you could talk to us about?
I think one of the main things is manpower.
Okay.
We need to really get engaged with our sheriff, our county commissioners, our council. Those people make the decisions about who does what.
Okay.
We need to make sure that we meet those people. And I talk to people every day. They don't know who our county commissioners are. They don't know who the mayor is. They don't know who the school board is. If we don't know who we're talking to or talking about, how in the world can we make a difference? So I make it a point to know all those people. I'll talk to them on a regular basis, and I ask the hard questions. And I will tell you that manpower is a big problem.
Okay. And how does that get solved, though? I mean, because you would have to employ, right?
Right. You have to employ, but not only that, there's people that can be eyes on the ground. If you see something, if you hear something, say something. And we don't have enough of that. I do. When I see something, I say something.
Sure.
We have people that don't want to do that. And I tell people all the time, if you don't want to release that information, you send it to me.
There you go.
I'll release it. I'll put it out there. I'll make the phone call.
There, y'all heard him, ladies and gentlemen. You
Absolutely.
send it to Kyle Sims if you see something in our area, in our county, or even, I mean, is that just for our area, or that be
Anywhere. I've got a following all over the country, especially on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm very active on those social media sites. We try to attend as many events as we can, get to meet people that follow us that have never met us in person. But our main goal is to get the information out there.
Okay.
Once we get that start, and you saw it in the Supreme Court this past week, when people rise and they've had enough, we can make a difference.
Amen to that.
But people have to get involved.
Yeah.
And like, if you're just sending me information from wherever you live, that's fine. I'll put it out there, and then it starts getting traction. I talk to people on my page in Lubbock, Amarillo, South Texas, West Texas, East Texas. I've been very blessed to have a voice in this mission, and I'll be that voice. But I do need an army behind me that's supporting me.
Right. I mean, anything hard that needs to be done requires that army behind you to push
Absolutely.
you. Yeah, that's necessary. What's the reason for your passion for the children? I mean, other than this is what we're supposed to do, is there something that led you there? Or?
You know, Teresa, I don't think there's anything that particular. I felt a calling. When we've been on the campaign trail for the last 5 years, traveling the state of Texas with Shelley and with Senator Huffines, and just listening to people, listening to their stories, watching what's going on in the school board meetings in the schools, the denial of what's going on. I felt God was calling me to be a voice for these children. And I pray about it every day, and, you know, got them on the right path. And so far, I'm on the right path.
Amen.
So
Amen.
That's why we did it.
You know, that's important, because what you're saying, Kyle, a lot of people think, well, I'm not sure. I mean, the Lord may call you to a place that you're not expecting. I can tell you that from my own life.
He does. And, you know, we visit some different churches, and what's amazing to me is the churches do not want to touch this.
Why is that? They think it's too political? I
think they believe it's too political, but how can a child being sex trafficked be political?
Correct.
That's not political. That should be a human sacrifice of us all to protect the children.
Amen.
And if I walk into a church and I don't hear anything about it, I'll approach an elder. I'll approach the pastor. Why are you not talking about this? And a lot of them just flat out don't want to touch it. They just don't want to talk about it. But what's more important, if you're going to be preaching the word of God, why are we not protecting our children?
Yeah, well, I do believe and agree with you that I think they've made it into, well, that's tied to a politician, to politics, you know, whatever, but it's really not. And it's really that simple. And actually, since Kyle brought that up, I do want to make a call towards to those pastors and people who are in charge of setting even, you know, classes and informational meetings outside of the church services, that it is important that we do talk about this, because this is our community, you know, and it's important that pastors hear this. This is not political. This show maybe have some very strong political portions to it, but the safety of the children and protecting the children, that's not political.
It's not. And you know, we take it a step further to our political leaders. I've spent many days in Austin testifying, being at hearings, being there for votes, and the lack of interest that our politicians have because they're afraid they're going to make somebody mad.
Yeah.
Why? And we deal with this battle every single day. You know, we had a couple of good laws that are going to be signed into law September 1, but look at the fight that it took to get that. It took thousands and thousands of concerned parents and grandparents being in Austin nonstop to make anything happen. Why are we having to force our leaders to protect the children?
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think that leaders are unfortunately, many of them, not all of them, but many of them are sellouts. They want their seat. They want their future. Because I've asked that even about our mayor here in our city, like, why this, why that? And it's all about maintaining your seat, which is, you know, if you're a faith person, I just say, well, you're going to have to answer the Lord for that one day. We don't get to get away with that.
People don't want the bad image on the city. They don't want a bad image on the establishment. And I get that. But what's worse, a worse image for your city? Children being sex trafficked or a business being outed. Out the business.
Yeah.
Get them out of here.
Yeah.
Because all they're doing is causing more harm.
Yeah. So is the city mayor here, at least in our city, is he involved in trying to get this taken care of? What can he do?
I will tell you that we've had a couple of meetings, no answers yet, but we have had some dialogue, and that's what I'm trying to do is meet with all these people and just tell them what's going on. What can we sit down? How can we bridge our gap? How can we come together and make a difference for this city? Because all we're going to do is improve it.
Yeah.
We're not going to hurt the city. We're going to improve it.
Right.
So I would encourage you, if people have not met with their local mayor, meet with them. Meet with your school superintendent. We've done that as well. We're in constant contact with these people all the time. I know our county commissioners very well. I know our sheriff very well, but a lot of people don't.
How is it received when you've gone in there to try to speak about these things that are important, that some may call political, but they're really just about safety? How are you received?
At the school board, not very well. Not very well. I've got board members that do not want me speaking there simply because we do not have a child in McKinney ISD. We do have a granddaughter. So if I pay taxes in this town and I have family in this town, I have every right to go to that board meeting and speak up.
That's true. And you just made a point. You said, if I pay taxes, I don't have to have children in the school, but if I pay taxes, I mean, you are funding the school.
Well, and it doesn't matter if you're funding school taxes, whether you're funding city taxes, you're still a taxpayer. You're a concerned parent of this city.
Sure.
So you have every right to do that. And that has to do with a couple of lawsuits that are being played out right now. Because these board members do not want us speaking out about this. They don't want it to be exposed.
Can I ask you if these meetings that you've been to have been addressed in a good, reasonable manner? Because one of the things that I've run into with nearly arguments with people, because people get upset and they say, well, the people that come in to speak, while what they are speaking about is good, they come in here and they do it in a very unruly manner, and or they don't follow the protocol as far as submitting the forms and things of that nature. Let's just be real with that. This is why I said, even before we started the show,
Sure.
it's how you address a matter.
Me personally, yes, I'm always very professional. I try to not make it about any of us. I try to make it about the children. Are there people that lose their cool when they speak? Absolutely. They absolutely do. But here's what I'd say about the process. Understand the districts have a process for removing books and stuff like that. But I've seen other districts across the country and across the state that we've had bold superintendents stand up and say, that's not going to be in our schools. You don't have to go through the process. It's bad. We're going to get it out of here. That's the kind of attitude we need to start taking.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I have seen the process followed a few times. We have made some headway. But as a parent and a grandparent, if you know something bad is in that school, especially a school board member, what they're not wanting to do is make the other 50% of the people mad.
Right.
That's why they won't do it.
Yeah.
So if you do have to follow that process, follow it. But that process needs to be more streamlined because it can be very lengthy.
Well, some of the complaints that I've heard, Kyle, about the books is that that we're being racist and bigots because we don't want to allow material that express an LGBT identity or agenda. So we're trying to shut that down. But what is the real problem? Is it that it's LGBT, or is it that it's sexually explicit?
It's sexually explicit. And, you know, I tell people this all the time and they know it. We have friends that are gay. We have biracials in our family. I don't hate anybody. But when you try to tell a 3-year-old child that they're not really a boy or they're not really a girl, that's where I take exception to what you're doing. You know, God made us the way He made us.
That's right.
He didn't make mistakes.
That's right.
So I cannot stand that people that want to brainwash these children, and especially when you see sexual explicit material that a 3 or 4-year-old can grab. One of my granddaughters could grab it, and I'm not going to be happy.
That's right.
So if you want to have that stuff in a school, then you put it behind a door, just like you've got everything else in the stores. Why does it have to be there for somebody to grab And what they're really not paying attention to is what happens to that book when they take it home. Does the sibling get a hold of it?
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
The online stuff is just,
correct.
we have uncovered so many websites that they have access to online and on their iPads, and it's not being monitored.
Mm.
You have to dig and dig and dig to find this stuff. But as we know, children are very smart on electronics.
Oh, yeah,
So they can find this stuff if they want to find it.
that's right.
Why are we allowing that to happen? We need to hold the vendors responsible, and we need to hold the board members responsible.
Well, I think there's just there's been such a kind of a blurring of the lines with people who believe that you have a right to express your sexuality. If you're gay, you're gay. If you're trans, you're trans. So it almost kind of gets put together where you can't see, okay, if you choose to live that way, while I am not in agreement with it,
Right.
you can choose that. But now you're sexualizing a child, and it's all getting blurred. It's not being separated between, I want to live this life, and there are sexually explicit things that a child should not be watching and
Right.
looking at and reading. So I think that, unfortunately, some of these things get blurred. And so people such as those who are on school boards, I've read some of the stuff that the school board people here in our city have talked about. I mean, they made sure to say they are progressive, which means that they are going to push this type of agenda.
Right.
That's the agenda. It's out there. There's no restraining that.
No, it's not. And what you learn in your own home, if that's the way you want to raise your child, I can't do anything about that. But let's get back to the basics of education in school.
Right.
Let's make sure we're teaching them math and English and science and trades that will help them in the future. This stuff in schools just does not belong there.
Well, I was thinking about this, Kyle, the other day, and I thought, you know what? You ever think about why they even started teaching sex ed in school? Why do they need to be the ones teaching your child sex ed?
They don't.
But they do. And I started thinking, wait a minute. This started way back then. This step
started way back in the 60s.
Right. So you start looking at it going, you didn't need to be teaching. Okay, if you want to teach anatomy and physiology, okay, maybe. But even then, you're like, this has been a intentional, progressive state to get to our children.
Absolutely has it. And this is why I'm trying to encourage groups in Collin County to have meetings about this, have brainstorming sessions about this on how to get involved. And not only that, what to look for and how to go in and do the research and find out what these kids are learning. That's the only way we make a difference. This started back in the 60s, and this just progressively got worse. Yeah. And it's going to keep getting worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I go back and I watch some of the old shows that I used to watch as a kid, I'm 45, and I look at some of the shows and I'm like, wait a minute, this was so progressive at that time. First of all, I didn't get it because I wasn't walking with the Lord at the time, right? So then your eyes open up and you're like, oh my gosh, this was being pushed way back then. And now I'm getting more and more educated on this. Absolutely. Once again, bringing back to the sex trafficking issue, however, there is a desensitization that's going on. And I get concerned in this, that even within the trans movement, that once you start saying, well, I can identify as whatever, eventually it'll become legal for adults to identify as a child and access your child.
Sure. And, we've seen it at doctor's offices, at dentist offices, almost anywhere you go now, there's a third box on there, or maybe there's a fourth box on there. You're either a male or you're a female. Right. I mean, I'm really good friends with Jeff Younger. I'm sure you know what Jeff Younger went through with his boys. Do you know?
Oh, is it the Fort Worth gentleman?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
do you want to just talk about that just real briefly for our viewers? Just give like a 30-second overview.
Well, his wife is a doctor, and they basically went through a nasty divorce, and she decided she was going to make one of her boys a girl, and actually got something ruled in her favor. But now she's moved to California, and she's going to transition one of those children.
Goodness.
We've got parents right here in McKinney doing it on school time.
Yeah.
So, when people understand their tax dollars are going to, number one, fight this, number two, support it, why are we sitting still?
Yeah. Why
are we not roaring like a lion, trying to do whatever we can to protect these children?
Yeah, it's 100% accurate. Kyle, as we get close to closing, what are some other things that you want to share with our viewers that It's really important for us to know.
I just want the reason I do what I do is I want to educate others. Like I have had the fortunate of being educated. Start really getting involved in your community. We cannot make this. We cannot make headway doing this if everybody doesn't get involved. And to have the same 30 or 40 people show up to every meeting, that's not doing anything. It's a repetitious cycle is all it's doing. So I would encourage people to start going to meetings, start getting out and knowing your state legislators, your local county reps, your school board, and start getting involved and asking the hard questions about what's going on in my city and my county.
Yeah.
It's very, very important.
I hate to say this, but I think that unfortunately we had to wait till it got this bad.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, it got bad enough that it turned up the heat for people to start using their voice, their actions, their time, their money, like you said, going to Austin and standing up for something.
Absolutely. And don't forget, 24 is coming up. There's going to be a lot of people coming out running. Remember what your state legislators, your council members, your school board members, remember what they have put us through for the last several years, and especially the last 2 years. We need to hold people accountable.
Absolutely. I think we need to do some serious research as the 2024 elections come on through. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. I have watched people who say they love God, they go to church, they do their thing, but when it came to voting, they voted with people who have very perverse agendas mm-hmm. for our community and our city. And I'm just like, I believe that people have a right to vote however they want. But if you say you are a believer, you better research what it is that you're voting for. And if you catch something that is not in line with God's word, then it is your responsibility to say, no, thank you.
Well, the easiest thing people can do is get on their computer, follow the money, follow the connections of anybody that's running. Mm-hmm. When you start following those two aspects of who that person is, mm-hmm. you find out really quick they're probably not the person they say they were on the surface.
Yeah. And let's be honest, Kyle, I think a lot of the issues to come from that people don't trust politicians. If I'm real, I don't think there's not one perfect politician. I think most of them have succumbed to something, some kind of pressure, some kind of whatever. So I'm not even pretending that these people are perfect. I actually go into voting knowing they might disappoint me a year after I voted for them.
Sure.
Right?
I can count on one hand how many I trust in Austin. I mean, that's wow. How bad it is. And this is why people, when politicians call me and want my money, they want my vote, they want my time to vote for them. No, it's not happening because of the reasons you've ignored me. You've ignored these children. You're not doing what you need to do for your community. It's all about your seat, your money, and your power. So I have no use for you.
So why vote for? I mean, some people say, why vote? Period. If they're all crooked, that's the cynicism that I hear. And I'm like, well, you have a responsibility. That's why.
Well, you do. And I'm not telling people not to vote. There's always another choice out there. And if people would do their research, they would understand that maybe that person that's coming in that has no name recognition, he might be the better candidate. That's why you need to do your research. When we voted this last year, I had people come up to me at the day of voting, last day of voting. Who do I vote for?
Yes, I had that happen.
I don't know him. I don't know him. Well, that's why we have to do research.
Yes.
We have to know who we're voting for.
And that is something that I really want to call out our friends to pay attention to. It is time for you to do research. Stop listening to your friends. Just because they want to vote for somebody. Listen, I'm a Latina. A lot of stuff, you get assumed that just because you're a Latina, you have to vote Democrat or you have to vote this way. Mm-hmm. I just say, no, I vote biblical, period.
Absolutely.
Right. Doesn't mean that those candidates that are conservative for the most part, that they're doing everything that I would like them to do. Because trust me, there are some things that are not going.
Absolutely.
And I say this so that people know, while you hear a very conservative view coming out of me, I actually still believe that the right, the conservative, the Republicans still have some issues that they need to figure out. And I'll say this, if we're not careful, I believe that the Republican Party will be following the left with this woke agenda if we're not careful.
Well, and some of your viewers may not know this, but Republicans have been in charge of Austin for 20 years. That means the House, the Senate, the governorship, and lieutenant governor. Are we really fighting the Democrats? Or are we fighting Republicans?
I heard, I'm not going to disclose the name, but I had a top level person say this the other day, and I thought, what in the world are we doing? I mean, it made me just get so angry on the inside and go, what the heck is wrong with these people?
Well, this is why you follow, there's a lot of different sites out there you can follow in the state that will, you can pull up the scorecards and the donors of these politicians, and it tells you where their money's coming from. It's all an agenda. So that's why I tell people we're not fighting Democrats right now. We're fighting our own party to save these children. That's why people need to get involved and hold them accountable.
You hear that? I mean, that's probably the most controversial thing that's been said on this show.
Well,
an eye-opening thing. I'm glad you said it though, because
absolutely.
We need to know this.
I call my legislators out daily on social media. I attack them because, listen, as I said in the beginning, who in their right mind thinks it's okay for an 8-year-old girl to be sexually trafficked in your county?
Yeah.
Why is that okay with anybody?
Yeah. Which brings me back then to saying, well, you said it, then why vote for the left why not vote for the left if the right's not protecting?
Because it's going to make it worse. We need to vote for the right person. I know in these upcoming elections, most of our Collin County reps are going to have primary opponents. I would encourage people to get to know those people. Check them out. That's where I do my research. I've met with most of these people already. I know who's running against them, and I'll cast my vote accordingly. But if you don't know who's running against them, you're oblivious to what's going on around you.
Again, who you vote for really can help. I don't believe that the world's problems are going to be solved by a politician, but I believe that it'll be walked out and worked out as we pray, as a nation, as a Texan, as that person that belongs to your city, your county, etc. And as you pray for your leaders and as you get involved as well. All right, this time it's for real. Any last words that you have to say?
I wanted to say one more thing, and I kind of touched on it. I want everybody to hold their churches accountable. You have to speak up at your church. If they're not talking about this and they're not asking the questions, why are they there every Sunday?
Well, there you have it, my friends. This has been a great conversation, Kyle. Thank you for speaking truth boldly, unapologetically to the viewers, and even talking about the party that you and I stand for. Because
Absolutely.
It's true. Our politicians need to get with it. We need to look different. So we call on the politicians, those representatives that we have even in our district, to rise up and be those who are a wall of protection for our children and for the families here in our area. My friends, it's been a great pleasure spending a little time with you. Kyle, God bless you. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much.
All right, my friends, God bless.